So, I don't know why place is not showing up. There it is. Here it comes. I don't know why it got messed up on my order there. So this right here would be a good example of you need to summarize this instead of write all this stuff down. So when we talked about place earlier, we talked about the fact that it sets one place apart from another. So we've already discussed this, and so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this slide. What we're looking for, what are some of the different physical features? So earlier when we talked, and some of you described different areas of the world that you've lived in, those are summarized here in those physical features. From climate to landforms, we don't have any mountains here. And so if you have lived, which I don't think any of you mentioned, but if you have lived in Colorado and you are used to seeing mountains every day, you're going to be a little disappointed coming here if you enjoy the view of the mountains. And so those are just examples. You are never going to have to list off that set right there of physical features. That is just giving you an idea of some of the possibilities that could be used to describe a place. You could describe it using highways. I realize that's on there twice. I don't know why I did that. Sometimes life is a mystery, and that's one of them. So highways are on there. Landforms, vegetation. I mentioned trees in Georgia are different than trees here. So that would be a way to describe the place. So please don't think you have to memorize that list. In fact, maybe you write down 2 or 3 of them, and that's really all you need. And then down at the bottom, the cultural characteristics, we're talking about the different people groups and how they are different from the way that we are, or maybe similar to the way that we are. No matter what culture you look into, everybody eats. I love food. There are certain foods that I really, really enjoy. Donuts being one of them. Coffee being the other. And it's just awesome that they work together. I probably should have been a police officer. My brother chose that option, and he doesn't really care. He enjoys coffee and donuts, but I may be in the wrong place. I don't know. But everybody eats. Not everybody eats coffee and donuts. You go to different cultures, they may have different food. So that is a similarity, but it might be a different similarity. It might be a different type of food. So that's why I'm going to go a little bit quicker here through some of these things. Again, this is going to be something where we're going to summarize region, and we have already talked about what region is, but these 3 types of regions would be important to understand what they are. So the first one is formal. And up here on the screen, I gave you a whole lot of examples of formal regions. You do not need to write all these down. I just simply gave you a bunch of examples. So a formal region is something that is recognized on a map like the United States. So a nation like Canada or Latin America. While that's not a country in and of itself, if somebody says Latin America, our mind should automatically think, okay, that is south of the United States, and a lot of times they speak what language there? Spanish, yeah. So we already have that generalization in our mind. So again, please don't write all of those down, but that gives you an idea what that's all about. Now, functional regions. So this is a little more general, and I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time here, and there's not really a whole lot that I want you to dig into on functional regions, but they're, as you see up there on the screen, they're largely based on an organization or the organization of the groups of people. So urban areas, suburban areas, rural areas. Farmers are typically not going to live in the city. That's just part of the functional region. It doesn't make sense for you to have a farm in the city. You don't have the space to plant your crops or have your cattle. So you're not typically going to find a farm in the middle of the city. Functional means that it's going to suit their occupation, their livelihood in the best way possible. Then perceptual is just based on our mindset of things. So I use the example of the South. Well, we can't define where the South begins. And I lived in the South for 10 years, and so there is definitely a different culture down there. Any of you Are any of you familiar with the song Sweet Home Alabama? Okay. Do any of you get excited when you hear that song played over the radio or at a restaurant? Okay. Those of you that are raising your hands, have you ever lived in the South? Like a month? Okay. So there is definitely a difference when that is played up here. There were only a few of you that said, yes, I get excited when I hear that. First time I was sitting in a restaurant after moving to Atlanta, and the restaurant played Sweet Home Alabama. I think it was a Texas Roadhouse. And that song came on. I heard the whole restaurant start cheering. It is like the unofficial national anthem of the South. It's just the weirdest thing ever. And we were in Atlanta, Georgia, so we were not even in Alabama. But there's this place called Stone Mountain that is down there in the Atlanta area where it is a tribute to some of the Confederate leaders, and they do this slideshow up on the face of the mountain that they projected up there. It's a pretty awesome laser show late at night. And they will always pull out Sweet Home Alabama, and the entire place just goes crazy. And they start hooping and hollering. It took me by surprise for the first time. But that's a perceptual region. It's not an official area. So this one here, I'm going to give you a number of examples of human-environment interaction. And this is a lot based on opinion, how we should treat our environment around us. So it depends on where you're at, and you might have somebody that sees a swampy area that looks like it's good for nothing, and you say that's a piece of trash land over there, and somebody else sees it for potential to build a Starbucks. And so, well, let's not make a connection there, but if you drain the land and then you build a Starbucks, so that's something that people are going to have different viewpoints on it. So again, those are simply examples. Please don't copy all those down. But everybody has a different view on how we should interact with the world because we have different value systems. This here is going to be an important thing here. These three types of distance. Three types of distance here. So geographers will use linear distance to tell us how far something travels. And it depends on the way that we describe this. You may say it is going to go in, that we are going to travel 100 miles. Or maybe we are going to travel 10,000 feet. Listen to your GPS. GPS usually tells you in linear distance. You change the setting, and it will talk to you in time. It may tell you how many minutes it's going to take you at your current pace to arrive at Grandma's house. So that's the type of distance when we're speaking of time. It's going to tell you, well, you've got another 4 hours and 59 minutes, close to eternity before you arrive at your destination. And then there's a psychological distance. And this is simply how you view it and how you perceive the distance. So it's kind of like you go to Grandma's house, and first time you go, it's like a 5 or 6 hour drive. It seems like an eternity. And you drive it 4 or 5 times, 6 times. And then you start to get familiar with the surroundings, and then it doesn't seem quite as long the more familiar you become with it. And it goes that way with any new environment. As you learn it, you realize, well, maybe it's not quite as far as what I had thought originally. So that's the comment there. As you become more familiar with an area, your linear time and psychological distance seem to shrink. It's all in your mind. Before we go today, did anybody have any questions on the final section of the homework that was talking about some of the tools geographers use? I know there was one page where it was asking you to look at weaknesses of maps, and the book didn't specifically tell you the weaknesses there. You needed to simply find a weakness in that map or one of the downsides to it, and then think of possible solutions. That type of thing's not going to be on your quiz, so we may discuss that a little bit in class on Friday, but don't worry about studying that section. However, there are some tools that would be important. Like I mentioned the GPS. I think you probably all know what a GPS is. The GOES is simply a set of satellites that monitor the Earth's rotation, and I'm trying to think what other ones we had on there. Yes, on my desk, I've got a stapler that you may use. Yeah, the GOES, that's for weather operating. That black thing over there is automatic stapler, so you just stick your paper in there, it'll punch you.